semdol ka ke mo fa seda.
Hello, welcome once again to EVE Online Talking in Stations. I am Matterall, News Chief for TheMittanidotcom. Talking in Stations is a show for EVE players about the news going on inside of EVE Online, and we talk about politics and what's happening in the game. We have a great show lined up for you today. We have some economic experts, and we're also going to cover Fanfest. So stay tuned, and we'll go ahead and start introductions with Ashtarothi.
Hey, I am Ashtarothi. I am a writer for Crossing Zebras, as well as on several podcasts, including Hydrostatic and Hydrag.
Awesome.
And this one.
Draken?
Draken Trevere. I'm in Multiplex Gaming Corp in The Bastion, and also from... what's our show? Open Com show on Thursdays.
Solid opening.
Nice.
Hey, it's Dirk McGurk from MPX Gaming Corp and the Bastion Alliance and the Open Com show and Talking in Stations and This Week in New Eden and probably next week something from the Neocom.
Okay, so our guest today, someone who went to Fanfest and has a blog, and also looks like he's part of EVE University, is Neville Smith.
Yeah, I'm Neville Smith. I'm former director of EVE University. I'm now a space hippie in the Signal Cartel.
Excellent. Love Signal Cartel. Minxie's one of my favorite players. Okay, and financial experts today, we have Lockfox.
Hey, I'm Lockfox. I'm on the Prosper Market Show. That's your weekly look into all of the market news. You can find it at Eve Prosper on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and we have a blog that hasn't updated in a while.
Thanks. And joining us from the, I guess I'll have them explain the lounge, is Caleb.
Hi, I'm Caleb Aranya. I represent the SCC Lounge and by that the MD forums, and I have a website that you can find if you catch me on Slack, so we don't have to plug everything, and I'm also the proprietor and editor of the EVE Guardian.
That's right, and finally we have Rivre.
Hey, I'm Rivre. I station trade in Jeddah, and I chat in the lounge, so you can find me in there and hanging out with Caleb.
Awesome. And we'll get to some interesting economic news and market news in just a few minutes, but first we want to cover the big story of there's major stories, right? Because FanFest just happened, and right on the heels of FanFest was the new expansion. So let's first go to FanFest, and Neville, do you want to start us off and tell us, how it was?
As usual, it was awesome. This was my 5th FanFest. We had about 2,000 people there, and if you've never been to FanFest, you don't know what you're missing. The biggest draw, of course, is the opportunity to talk to your fellow space nerds and, basically terrorize Reykjavik for a few days and drink entirely too much and have too good a time. So I encourage everyone who plays EVE, seriously, should go to FanFest at least once in their life. I went once and thought it would just be a one-off thing, and this 5th one was one of the best, no doubt about it. Citadels very clearly was the dominant theme, but there was a lot of other news that went there, so it was a fantastic time for everybody.
Yeah, it's great. Everybody seemed to be having a good time when you look at the all the Twitter chatter and Facebooks that were coming out. Well, you guys, none of the rest of us went to Facebook, but does somebody want to talk about the coverage on live stream?
FanFest? All of us went to Facebook.
I'm sorry.
I don't use Facebook anymore.
I don't go to Facebook, but we did not go to FanFest. Any of you want to talk about what the stream coverage was like?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say that the stream coverage seemed to have been at a quality significantly higher than we have seen in previous years. One of the things about EVE or CCP as a company is that they're pretty notorious for having, technical glitches and hangups in their broadcasting, but I don't remember any actual major problems throughout the entire stream. So technically speaking, the stream was really good. The downside was that they actually didn't stream nearly as much as I think that they have in the past, or what I would expect. There was a lot of things that apparently happened at FanFest that weren't streamed and that weren't recorded, which I'm kind of
some of those shouldn't have been, but
that's true. But I mean, like, a lot of there were panels, and like, for instance, not to plug it too much because it's after the fact, but like Makoto Priano had apparently a really good drifter panel, and it'd be nice for that to be, able to be seen even after the fact.
Has it come out on YouTube?
I love the way that Neville's colleague Spanky was basically stealing the show in the streams. That was awesome.
Was he photobombing or something?
No, he was one of the moderators. Yeah, he was one of the moderators. They invited a number of players to be moderators. So Sindel was one, Spanky was one. I forget who the other two were, but
Rain
Chocolate Rain, yeah, and I can't remember the last one. Sorry.
From that show with no name. I am wondering who that was. One of the things I noticed this year, or at least I think I noticed it, and correct me if I'm wrong. In previous streams of FanFest, I don't remember them going to a blank screen as much. I remember there being these interview things and whatnot that kind of carried you from one session to the next session.
Yeah, this year the frozen screen with just the pictures seemed to last a lot longer than in the previous years.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Then I wasn't noticing something. Yeah. Which I thought was odd. I don't know why they had to do that.
Well, also, go ahead.
Yeah. The reason for that was because in prior years they had a mobile crew that would go around and do interviews. They didn't do that. They had one set. They brought the 07 show set, and they all just stayed there. So there was no mobile crew to kind of fill the gap.
I don't know, the slick, I did enjoy the 07 set right there, which I thought was a step up from the sort of director chairs they've done in the past.
Yeah, I think that it was the correct, decision, but yeah, it had that effect.
I do sort of wish that they had sort of a B team catching some of the other side panels, because I don't think many of the player presentations made it to the stream. I unfortunately did not get to tune into much of it.
Well, several people in the chat, including Noisy Gamer, has said that several of the other panels were actually filmed that weren't on the stream, so they should be popping up. And I did actually see a bunch of them dropped on the YouTube channel today, so I'm still going to have to sift through them all.
That's pretty good they did that, but I mean, because in the last couple of Vegases that I've been to, they did a similar thing, because I mean they can only show one discussion on Twitch unless they have two Twitch channels, but then again now you have to pick like which one do you want to watch. It's kind of like two stages at like the big concerts or whatever. But the thing, I don't know if they do that intentionally as like a incentive or like a bonus for the people that actually went, or if it's just merely they don't want to have as many cameras. Although if you said they filmed the side ones and they'll just put them on YouTube later, that's actually a pretty good idea too.
Well, it's a logistical thing that you can only broadcast to one channel on Twitch, and that means they have to have CCP2, and there's a bunch of other logistical things that make that more difficult, so I sort of understand.
Reeva?
Yeah, I was very disappointed that they didn't show the structures roundtable, seeing as the Citadels were due out 3 days after FanFest, so it would have been really good to be able to listen in or watch the structures roundtable.
Actually, let's talk about the content for a minute, because I think you raise a good point. This may have technically been kind of their best, and I think it was, and I even think their presentations were probably as fine as they've ever been, but the content I found was a little bit lacking. But I want to go to Neville first, because he wrote a lot of great stuff in his blog, and if you haven't seen it, we'll put it up on screen now.
Yeah, I have to say, the opening day keynotes, for me at least, were a big disappointment. And it really, we talked about it pretty extensively when we were there, and it's really kind of CCP's own doing. If they had saved up, as they have done in past years, all of the news about Citadels and not released it over a period of time in dev blogs and chats and so forth and so on, it would have been the most amazing reveal ever, and we'd all just be blown away. and it would have been unbelievable. But because we knew all of that in advance and we actually saw the keynote, there wasn't a lot of news. In fact, the Structures Roundtable, which I attended, I was very disappointed in. When you actually see the recording, and I'm sure it will eventually be posted, you're going to find out that they didn't really say anything that we don't already know. So there's not a lot. There was not a lot of news there, and that was probably the only bad thing about FanFest this year, is that we already knew all the big news before we actually walked into the sessions.
Yeah, it did kind of seem that the announcements were all running up to this FanFest. I don't think even if they had a bunch of stuff to announce, they were going to, because they don't want to take the attention off what's about to hit. It would send a mixed message, I think.
Well, I mean, back in the day of expansions, right? And obviously this is an expansion, but it's not coming at what we would have normally attributed the normal expansion time. They would have done much bigger reveals because it was still, a month and a half typically away from when the summer expansion would have come. This is the new era of you're getting information as you go along, which is what we've wanted. We've talked so negatively over time about them mismanaging player expectations by putting up a whole bunch of sizzle and when the steak finally hits the plate, it's a little tiny burger.
Or
it's
it's the
not
first
the steak
year,
that
right?
you thought
It's
it was.
the first year we get that we get the change in policy, that they're switching it. So now they're keeping it to themselves instead of getting out too early with information. So you've talked about this on many shows now, Dirk, that it's a total switch.
Well, and this is what we've been asking for, though. I mean, now, does that take away from something like a FanFest? EVE Vegas obviously had some reveal information that came out there, right? Because that was several months before all this. We started to hear more about Capitals there and Citadels as well there. Here, the stuff is coming out 4 days after FanFest or 5 days after FanFest was over. But I think that what's bigger is they didn't kind of have that big future thing attached to it either. So while we knew that Citadel was coming because it is the here and now, there wasn't anything that really kind of wet the whistle about the future other than, and this will continue on because we have so much longer to go on Structures.
Well, and that's definitely the spot that I wanted to hit on, is that we knew about Citadels. You're exactly right, and this was a great chance to blow the top off and be like, and get Siegel up there to do her wonderful, and here is the 18-month dream, and it's going to be amazing, and tie into all the other IPs. That's kind of what I came to expect, and instead we kind of got we're still delivering on what we were doing, and that's not really the hype that FanFest is supposed to give us.
Yeah, Locke, you're absolutely right. In fact, I have to be honest, that part of the presentation pissed me off. And the reason is she threw up the rather vague timeline that we've seen a million times. She put up a line that bisected down the middle of it and said, "We're about there."
No, it changes each time, right? Doesn't it?
There was two things that made up for that, right? The first appearance of Ghost and the first appearance of Maria Sayan.
Well, we'll get to Ghost in just a second, but you're right, Neville, that she put up an all-new visual on where we were. None of the three have matched. They're all different. I guess because the roadmap is constantly changing because the priorities shift, but it really didn't say much.
No, the point is that it's still very vague, and I, like you, Dirk, I was looking forward to seeing some more clarity around, and they don't have to give a specific time frame, but where are they headed next? I mean, there was not a lot of new news. In fact, there was a lot of reluctance on the part of all the devs that were there to share anything beyond the Citadel expansion release. There was a lot of it was gray, and it was deliberately done that way. You got the feeling that they were all briefed in advance. Don't overcommit. Don't say anything that could be misinterpreted. And in fact, I also got the feeling that some of them were holding it. It's like they had something interesting to say at EVE Vegas down the line. So maybe that was the strategy.
Well, I guess the question is, what would you rather be? Would you rather be hyped now and potentially disappointed later, or maybe we're just so used to the hype that we're a little bit disappointed now, but our expectations are in line with reality?
So
yeah, exactly. That's what I got from this. That this time around, I didn't get to be jumpy in my seat. Right, I didn't get to go, oh my God, this is going to be huge. So the underwhelming thing might actually be very healthy for not making too much drama and stirring players' expectations.
I mean, as far as the timeline goes, right? The thing that I was kind of looking for there is I know that we still have quite a bit of time left in this whole as these structures play out and things like that, right? I'm just not sure what the glimmer is past that. And I'm not asking for like a lot of details. I'm not asking for you to promise me something that is not going to happen. But let us know that, hey, guess what? And there is something else out there that's going to affect all of you in a way that a hint.
Well, as far as new expansion, so now that they're back on this large expansion every so often, as opposed to
they're not.
Constant up.
They're back on an expansion as needed.
Oh, as needed? They're not like just scheduling it again? Like
No, they specifically didn't schedule another expansion, so there is no scheduled expansion for this year, or
that's kind
there
of
is
sad,
no
actually.
scheduled expansion right now.
There was one other thing too.
Throws my point out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's no. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That sucks.
I was with you. I was expecting a big, hoo-ha around what's the next expansion, and there wasn't any. It was kind of a letdown. And the other thing too, and I wrote about this in my blog. All the news was about about nullsec. There was nothing for highsec. There was nothing for wormholes. There was nothing for lowsec. Nothing for faction warfare. There was nothing for people like me who don't play principally in nullsec. The nullsecers had a lot to talk about. It was great. They loved it, but for the rest of us, even in the breakout sessions, there was really not a lot other than bumping. Big freaking deal. So, that was it.
Well, let me challenge you a little bit.
Themselves do play into, and
Yes.
sorry, Matterall, but
No, that's my point. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Citadels themselves do play very much into high. Just something that we're going to get into, tonight in conversation, obviously. I think that the storyline behind what they mean to null and what the capital changes mean to null, and maybe elements of low sec and things like that, ends up being bigger. But the significance of them on high sec is potentially quite game changing, depending on what players end up doing with them.
Yeah, no,
But could you also say that null has now gotten such a big change and so much focus on the roadmap that it's very likely that then anything that's new is going to be focused on, and again, we're pointing to CCP Coast, the whole thing with the player experience, and the fact that we might actually see next year being the major rollout on the new brands and integration and law. And I think, personally, I suspect that we might see something like rekindling some of the walking stations concept, not like it was, but something in that direction.
I would say that, they're not doing any big expansions, but we have got, in autumn, we've got the industrial structures coming, and that could potentially change a lot of stuff for all areas of sec. And then we've got in winter the drilling platforms coming, which could again make major changes depending on what they do with moon mining and how it affects mining and other resource collection stuff.
I still feel like all those industries, and Ash, you can go right after me. I'm sorry. I'll let you go in front of me, except I'll lose my point. It just seems that everything still is in support of PvP, and the majority of PvP being in nullsec. It just feels like everything's now geared for this arcade-ish style action game that really wasn't EVE. It's everything else, but it's not necessarily what EVE was like. Ash, do you want to say something?
Yeah, so I think there's two problems when it comes to evaluating this FanFest. First of all, I'd like to remind everybody that especially starting last FanFest, like, excuse me, people keep kind of going back to this idea of like the epic arcs and telling us years in advance and all these features that never come up. Like, that's the old FanFest. Starting, I think, last year or maybe the year before that, CCP Siegel had a very strong thing where nobody was allowed to talk about anything that they didn't expect to happen that year, because, restoring faith in things that are talked about in FanFest was a really important goal, especially at that time. And we saw a continuation of doing so this year. Unfortunately, that means, well, on the other side of that, we understand the stuff that we're talking about now a lot more, given the fact that, we've now seen how Citadels work. So when they say industrial platforms, we get that. We understand like 90% of it, because it's just Citadel based around industry. So it's like a shorthand. The presentation doesn't have as much impact because we already kind of understand it, even though its actual impact in the game may be huge. And in the other note was that it really sucks that they had to try to tell us their grand vision a week before the biggest change in EVE in the last like 3 or 4 years, because the God honest truth is they don't know. Depending on how Citadels works will greatly change their strategy for the next year or two. And you can see that in the fact that their entire summer, their big dedication for summer is just fixing anything that's wrong with Citadels. It was a Citadel relook. And so obviously they're expecting the next period of time to be basically making sure that this is happening, or this works well, which honestly is a version of CCP over the CCP that we've had in the past, who's been like, here's your feature, what you don't like about it, maybe we'll see it again in 5 years.
No, Ash, you're totally right, and I think that's very responsible of CCP. But I still, as a player and going there, I wanted to hear more about fixing PvE and making it better. I wanted to hear more about faction warfare and making it a 4-way split. I wanted to hear more about the lore and how it's being integrated into the game. I wanted to hear about possible changes to mining and all the things that we have to kind of grind through. We heard none of that. None of that.
I think,
have you contacted your Council of Stellar Management representative?
But don't you think that the dev hours that's been invested, it's been really rushy, right, to get it out properly? So the dev hours is going to be used for all those things that Neville is talking about, because they're going to be loosened up, and this, you don't need as much work as they've done already on structures. Most of it is kind of done.
Max disagrees. Max agrees with Astarothi, by the way. Go ahead, Neville.
Okay, but here's the point. They could have said that. They could have said, and this is how it could be used in high-sec, and this is how it could be used in low. Even though you're absolutely right, and we know it has major impact, it was as if you weren't in null, you were basically ignored. That was the impression that we got.
Well, in the Seagull era, there is no way that they're going to risk another Monument episode. No way.
But I think they are.
Rather be totally silent about anything they're doing than risk that again, because that was so close to killing him.
I think it's actually the wrong direction, but I shouldn't say it that way. But you're going to get a Monument problem if everybody else is ignored and just the people who are PvPing night after night after night. Because those guys burn out, I think. I don't think they stick around. It's the social, the long investment that actually works for EVE. Otherwise, we're just like a second-rate MOBA.
I'm going to make sure, I want to point out that historically, the big presentations have been PvP-centric because they're the blingiest. And historically, industrial, quality of life, and those kinds of changes basically get announced like in between patches. So we get those things, but they don't get prime time because it's not the glitter, it's not the glitz.
And we're not
make a
being
cool
fair
video
to
of
CCP
building
because
stuff.
if you look at what's changed over the last 2 years, how the idea and of actually integrating player stories with Andrew Grogan and all these things, it's become a new normal for CCP to integrate with the players, make us the focus. And this is something that's taken a long time to actually get them to do. This is a huge thing, and they are trying to figure out how to do that properly, with a few mistakes with naming wars and backdrops for characters and stuff like that. But they are doing it.
And giving an old alliance name to somebody.
Well,
breaking that up.
Look, no, the whole nullsec, all of these changes that were, I guess, initiated because of stagnation in nullsec. You have to remember that had gone on for a number of years. This is taking far longer than what. Well, I'm going to say what I thought, but what I think doesn't matter. I think it's taking far longer than what they thought it was going to take. Or the whole fact that it's taking so long goes to show you just how much that they've had to change in the back end coding. Pauses were something that they never would have touched, right? And they didn't. They had to go and completely reinvent what structures we're going to be about in the future. The problem that we face, and why maybe we've been hearing nullsec for what seems like so long now, is that we're going to continue hearing nullsec for what seems like so long, because it's just not finished yet. But when
Dirk, I agree, but nullsec is less than 15% of the player base.
Agreed.
I mean, what about the rest of us? Seriously,
well, those are all alts.
Yeah, come on.
I mean, I do think they wanted to get Citadels out before FanFest, ideally. So then they could say, yeah, we've made these really cool structures. Here's the crazy things you guys have done with them. We look forward to bringing you the next lot, and here they are. And then it just seems that it wasn't ready in time. So when they decided it would be the week after FanFest, there was a lot of feeling that, FanFest was going to be a bit of an anticlimax because, yeah, we know what's coming and we can't get all excited about it.
Great.
Yeah, we're just waiting now.
I mean,
good point.
And we shouldn't forget the fact that there actually has been a lot of stuff that wasn't specific to nullsec over the course of the last 12 months. I mean, all of this lore stuff that was out there, all of the drifter stuff and everything. You go back to, say, the Cryas changes. I mean, those were not just about nullsec. You did end up having something that happened later on, in terms of nullsec industry and some rebalancing, and in terms of mining and things like that. But there are these other things. Even when there are those things that are related to other parts of space, okay, they don't get the chatter, they don't get the talk that the 15% of players who are supposedly from nullsec create. And I'm only going to say that's the way that the history of EVE has been. The vocal part of EVE comes out of this big, giant, player-driven saga that goes on out there.
Yeah,
because it's a bad posting war.
Shouldn't we focus on how they rolled out these events, Dirk, right? These events have been inclusive with the players, telling player stories, competition on gathering most of a thing that you then get your name mentioned for. It's been very much that new vision of telling the player stories. And that's so new, and they need to get used to doing that and figure out how to do that, because that is kind of a meta PvE, really, right? It's not actually PvP related at all. You're taking part in these things, and then they are telling the stories about the players inside the lore. That's new. I've not seen that at all before.
No, you're right,
Neville.
Yeah, and in fact, I'll tell you, I went to the roundtable. I was very impressed by CCP Ghost. You're absolutely right. And I went to the roundtable discussion, which unfortunately was not recorded. But this idea of hooking players by sucking them into their own story and making them part of the story of EVE, right out of the bat when they're a new player, is something that he gets it. He understands. And by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to nullsec to create a player story. That could be anywhere in the game, in any kind of space. So I was very encouraged by that, by what he had to say in his point of view. And I think they're really going to do some things to get people much more engaged in EVE a lot faster, regardless of where it is that they decide to play.
Yeah, let's talk about CCP Ghost if we can right now. What do you guys think?
He apparently has a brain.
I was blown away. It was the first thing I did after that, after the whole FanFest was over. It was actually rip the segment that he was in and put it up in alone. So he touched upon some of the things that should have been in 5-6 years ago. We should have had someone like him long ago.
Yeah, this is CCP Ghost is actually one of the reasons why I was really surprised to hear some of the feedback that I've been hearing about, the not high sec stuff or whatever, because, you see this idea of emerging stories come up. The president of Iceland even says, talking about telling stories, this statement of telling stories was repeated so many times over FanFest, it has to mean something. It's a refocus towards that. And he specifically said that these stories come from the empires. And this matches some of the notes that like CCP Affinity and others were saying in EVE Vegas, where they really want to expand upon our relationship with the pirate factions and kind of allow our interactions with the empires to be more interesting. But here's the problem. If CCP Siegel comes out there and says, nullsec was last year, this year is the year of PvE, then people would have a riot. And so what do? You say, well, you list all of your achievements and all that stuff, and then you say things like, okay, at the end of the year, there's going to be this huge mining and industry thing that's going to come out. That's a pretty good chance to overhaul that stuff. And also there's going to be a lot of stuff with the Serpentis and Pirate Faction Titans and all that stuff. There's probably going to be something involving, ramp up to that. I hope that they're not just going to be like, lol, and now the blueprint drops and that's it, So there's hints to it, but it is true that you do have to kind of put on some tinfoil and read between the lines to see it, because of the fact that it's not very popular stuff. And quite honestly, with our community that we have,
I disagree a lot. You say that it's not interesting. It will be interesting when we start looking at the new brands, at the VR, at the potential of integrating the brands into the whole EVE lore and the universe. The fact that we already get that there's going to be a player named monument from the event in Valkyrie, right? So this is definitely going to be interesting. It's not going to be maybe the main thing for the very null-centric and PvP-centric players, but it's going to pull a whole new segment of players to EVE. And a lot of them were the ones that left back in 09 or 10.
I absolutely agree with that.
That sounded like a mic drop.
No, I'm just saying, well, first of all, achievers will seek out achievements, and so you don't as long as the achievements are available and people are talking about it, the achievers will hunt them down. So that's good. I'm just saying that during the presentation you see this sort of stuff, and to me, I see that there's going to be a pretty significant PvE overhaul, especially with working with the AI and all that stuff, unless those projects were abandoned, which last I checked that they hadn't. But there's a pretty good trend towards that sort of content. It just wasn't highly showcased at the keynote.
Neville, can I ask you, what was the mood of people at FanFest about the content, not just partying with each other, but...
Understand the mood was positive. I mean, Citadels are great. It doesn't matter what space you play in or what you like to do in EVE. Everyone's very excited about that. But there was this feeling that we just wanted to kind of do more. We wanted to know what the next step was. What's the next 18 months look like, and at least a little bit more detail, or at least in some big chunks. And we did not get that. We didn't get it in the roundtables. Everyone was holding things very close to the vest. So, and to CCP's credit, I think they really wanted to hold it back so that they didn't set expectations, as Dirk said, and then have us all complain about it, a year from now. So, but it was a little disappointing, candidly, in that regard.
Well, I think it's now actually a CCP phobia. The CCP are dreading looking into anything regarding player events on a major scale that has impact due to the T20 event, of course. And they have a huge phobia when it comes to talking about things like ambulation, lore, with any meaningful impact. Like, most of the lore is just disconnected from anything game mechanic. You're not winning anything from it. You're just looking at it like a picture.
Well, we just had a tournament that was based on lore, but that might be something that's kind of few and far between. It does seem like
there's been several events, all of which or most of which have had some sort of competition or they're window dressing on an event that was gonna, like, a little mechanic's gonna happen anyway, like a mini game.
They're not like getting T2 BPOs. That's my point.
Well, that's just that's a bigger investment, but I wonder if, this thing with Ghost reminds me that choosing a race has no consequence. And Ash, you've talked about this at length, and I think in EVE Vegas we were in that room together when we were talking about how the seasoning and the history of EVE isn't even inside the game. Like, systems don't have a history. You don't know that this is the big battle where Bob was sealed off and couldn't get out of their pos and stuff. Like, none of the history of EVE is actually written into the game. So it doesn't feel like there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, it's even misleading, right, character creation, because I know when very first time I came into this game, and I made a Caldari guy, because I was looking at all the different races. It gives you the background on the types of races, and then the 3 sub races in those. And so I picked mine specifically because I'm like, oh yeah, I want the big corporate machine, oligarchy, oppressive empire. That's what I want to play as. And then I got in the game, I'm like, oh, that has no.
It has nothing to do with it.
It's just how my character looks. That's all that matters.
Let me
Oh,
throw.
come on, you can't expect people who are coming in fresh to actually know all that stuff means and stick with that.
No, but
decision
the
for 10
archetype,
years.
the archetype, and you're kind of like, cool, I get to play this kind of, I get to immerse myself as
Right,
this
well,
kind of character.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know how EVE worked, but I was figuring like maybe there's like some passive skill, because I mean, I've played WoW, I've played some other MMOs before. I'm like, there's some passive skill that affects this some way, and I got in the game, it's like, I don't know, everyone's the exact same. It's just the few starting frigate, the frigate race class you start with and how your character looks. That's literally all that matters when you create your character. So that
I
right
think
off the
Drayden's
bat,
got
There's
a
a
very
few
important
standing.
point.
It's a feature. It's a feature of the
It's standings.
sandbox.
Well,
You
Caleb, I
can't-
want to
you
throw
gotta
a
keep it
question.
pretty blank.
I want to
No,
throw a
can
question
I
out.
just comment on
Sure.
on Drayden's, because I think that's really important. The fact that they nerfed and flattened the races, it's a huge mistake, because there was never in EVE any sort of feeling of being locked into a race, even though you had a benefit in a specific branch. So the whole thing with the majority of players choosing Caldari in the early beginning because of missiles and aggression, that's just a flavor that leveled out later on as people trained up. It's perfectly fair and valid that you choose a race, get some benefits from that, so you get a head start, and then it levels out later on. I think that was a perfect design, and I think it's a very big mistake to have removed that.
I think
I disagree the strongest possible, because we got to live with these characters for 10 years, and that's a big pill to swallow when you're coming in fresh and you're like,
Yeah,
I
but-
don't even know if I'm going to stay past the trial.
Well, but hold on a
But
second.
I've been playing
Forces
for 3
nothing.
years,
You're
and
not
now I
getting
want a
anything.
thing.
It's
But
not an advantage at all. It levels out in like a month, too. You're just having a small head start.
Well, we
There's
also
nothing in it. It's
lived
just like a booster.
we also lived for a very long time with very permanent things. Your corp history was permanent. Your skills were permanent. Like your clone was permanent. Like all that stuff meant
Your
something.
attributes were permanent.
Your attributes, yeah, before you could move them around and stuff. So that permanence actually was something that kind of locked in decisions, and that created a richness. You made mistakes. Your mistakes were still there, scars forever. But that is all being unraveled.
well, and oh, sorry, go ahead if you're.
No, go ahead. I finished my
Oh
point.
no, I was just gonna say, like, and what Lawfox said, and someone in chat just mentioned that too, about possibly being locked in for a long time based on the very first choice you have in the game, which you may regret later on. But that, all right, I like that, because it puts weight on that decision, and it actually, like, whether you like them or not, it provides consequences or benefits down the line, and it's something that it just kind of gives an identity to the character that you pick right off the bat, as opposed to just being this bland, plain thing that
And
changes.
it ties into personality and into the whole ambulation and avatars. When you choose an elf or an orc, you know what type of person is going to be playing that, and that would be what you got when you choose the bloodlines and the races in EVE. You get an idea of who has chosen this character. Why are you flying with a Bruta avatar? That's because you're most likely going to have that personality trait when you play. That it levels out after a month or two means that there really isn't a balance issue. EVE has never had a balance issue like that. There's a choice issue, which is population based, but it's not the game mechanics. It never was.
I think Noisy
Yeah.
Gamer said something earlier that I wanted to come back to. He said this is like Torfy phobia. So we know that Torfy kind of authored a lot of the art and a lot of the lore in the early EVE. And after Incarna, that kind of seemed to switch.
He got benched.
Yeah, Torfy's been benched for a while.
I think I can give a little insight here, and I think
Sure.
Locke's going to have a fit about this. But
Grrr.
attending the session with Ghost, I mean, he sees so much potential in the lore around the empires, especially for a new character. As they go through the new player experience, I think you're going to see that emphasized more. It is going to matter more as a new player that you're Caldari versus Galente versus Minmatar versus Amar to get you sucked in and make an emotional connection to your character. Then after you complete that initial experience, then I think Caleb's right. After the first month or so, that'll back off, and then you can choose whatever path you want to go on. But I think as a way to draw players into EVE, you're going to see more emphasis on those initial character selections and what race you choose and what that means to your initial experience.
Sure, and I can give you guys the benefit of the doubt on that on your first 60 days kind of thing. My point was more that, like, One of the big things that got me started and hooked to EVE in the very first days, I started EVE and WoW the same day just to try trials, and like I hate the fact that in the traditional RPG, it's you pick your elf and you pick your gender and you pick your class, and that is you forever. And if you want something else, you roll it again and you go do something else, and you can never really go beyond the red versus blue archetype of high fantasy BS. And you can't be the defector orc that decides that, oh, we were wrong all along, and the
I want to be an elf.
I am trans whatever the thing, and I want to go change sides and fight for the humans because they know what they're talking about. And you just can't do that in the traditional RPG thing, and that pisses me off from a hardcore role playing perspective.
Hold on a second.
Locke,
Let's have Neville and then Reaver.
It sounds like you really whatever you self-identify with is really your. we respect that. If you
I am
need
the
to go to a
prettiest damn
safe zone,
orc
it's
in
okay.
everywhere.
Okay, Reaver?
Yeah, I was going to say that the problem in the old days of EVE was that, there was the problem with everyone being a curer if they wanted to do industry. But aside from that, as Caleb said, it didn't really stop you picking whatever you wanted. I had 2 mains back in 2008. I've got Reaver, who's a Caldari Sievra, and I chose that because I wanted to fly the Blackbird. On day 2 or so, you could get straight into the Caldari Cruiser. And then my other out was a Brutal because I wanted to do PvP. So I had the Riptor, which was the god of frigates back then. And after that, you could just specialize where you wanted, but it gave you a thing that you could get into straight away without causing any problems and without
Hell, you had to know that just to begin
wait
with.
for anything too much.
Yeah. Marcia Mello agrees with you, Locke. She says that there is no archetype. You're supposed to choose behavior. It's an alt. The alt is a mirror.
Yeah, but it's only helping. It's only helping you if you do not have an opinion yet. It's not stopping you from making a dwarf druid or an elf barbarian with 9 intelligence. There's nothing stopping you in EVE. It's just helping you choose what you would call an archetype.
Sure,
and then
right.
you can get out of that whenever you want. So
I
really disagree with the whole thing of that being a problem, and I hated the fact that they nerfed it. I think it destroyed so much flavor and so much lore.
Well, and I'm happy to make it a story. Like we should be bringing our fresh people into the game, and you want to make them the central part of the story. That's the escapism of games. Great, that's great. And I'm happy to have that. I just never want, like, I don't know how you carve out a piece for that and not also sort of screw yourself into, like, well, what if I want to change my mind and I want to be Caldari, picked Caldari race, and I played for 2 years, and then, Galante faction warfare is where my heart is, and I'm defecting to the frogs, and that makes a cool story, and I'm all for enhancing that story. But I don't know how to drive that with mechanics.
Well, it's because of pluralism, right? If you drive or help the players to choose according to the law, then you won't have this mishmash of players affiliating with, say, Galente. You shouldn't have the opposing faction. You shouldn't have traitors in a majority or even representative distribution. It should be rare that you see an orc fighting on the elf side. It should be extremely rare. Same in the law. You shouldn't see a lot of Brutus being in Caldari, right? It makes no sense.
Okay.
In modern MMOs, though, we've solved this problem, or they've solved this problem, and usually there's some sort of like traitor event that you can go through that allows you to change your affiliation. Or like, for instance, Arcage, you choose your initial side, but then you can defect to the
dwarf
pirates.
druid, right? The traitor is a dwarf druid. It is someone that has chosen to be outside of his norm. That's the whole point. That's why you have these traitor stories, so you can be unique, so you can be a Dristuard and Dark Elf.
I hate to quash all this and stuff, but I wanted to actually move on because I think this discussion goes on.
That was all about the new player experience and Ghost, right? That was the origination of that.
Yes.
I was trying to remember how we got there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a dirty rotten role player at heart.
That's all right.
I just have to.
Drayden looks like an elf, and Neville, go ahead.
Well, I want to make one final point. This is all about retaining players. In the roundtable discussion, Ghost said almost 1,400,000 people a year try EVE, and more than 50% of them drop out in less than 2 hours. And the reason is because they don't get sucked in to what their character is about, what their story is about, where is their role in this. All they get is candidly, a lot of stuff about mechanics. And so we've got to do something a little different to retain more of these players. And I agree. I think if we can get them sucked into the story a little bit more, I think we can retain a bigger percentage of those players.
That's cool. Okay. There's one last thing about FanFest I wanted to cover, and that is the trailer itself. Real quick, you guys put a Y or an N, yes or no, if you like the trailer in the chat, and if we could have some thoughts from you guys on it. Reaver, let's start with you.
Yeah, I like the trailer. Everyone's been going on about the wrecking machine. That hasn't quite grown on me yet. I think it's going to be a bit like The Killing is Just a Means. That song took forever for me to start liking it, but now it's one of my favorite permaban ones.
Okay. Any thoughts on like what the message of it was?
I don't know. I have to admit that I didn't watch the trailer more than once. So
Is that telling?
It was the memes that came on Reddit a couple of days later were more about it. With the it was focusing on the wrecking your dream side of it.
That was also in the piece on Falcon.
What do you guys think of the trailer?
Well, I'll speak up here. First of all, live, it sounds great. It looked really cool. But I agree, the message was EVE is all about blowing stuff up, not necessarily about building something. And, it's both. It needs to be both. So while I enjoyed the trailer, it was great. And by the way, listening to that song live, played by Permaband, is amazing. And you guys all missed it because you weren't at FanFest. But, so I like the song better than perhaps you do. But I was a little disappointed that the emphasis was on the destruction aspect and not necessarily on the building aspect of the game.
So I'm going to say that I really appreciated the whole shtick, but at the same time, like, I feel like it's a case that they got too smart for their own good, right? Because in order to fully understand it, you have to understand a lot of things that are going on in the background and about the lore and all that. There's a lot of like inside knowledge that's required to fully understand, a lot of these references, like even the building dreams and whatnot. Because stop me if I go on too long of a journey, but like back in Vegas when they first showed it, they put the tagline on it, a city built in heaven is built of dreams. And that is actually a callback to an ancient Jovian proverb. So it was a nod to those people who know what that is. And that's a reference to the fact that the Heaven constellation was one of the home systems of the Jove, and so on and so forth. So they had this whole idea of like building dreams, and then that showed up in Upwell's thing, the building dreams, and so there's that kind of thread that was pulled on. And then finally during that presentation, you watch the entire presentation. They first show you the Upwell advertisement for the industrial platforms, and that advertisement doesn't get interrupted. It's a fairly straight edge, like Upwell advertisement. And so when you finally get to the final presentation with the trailer, you're set. If you understand all of that, or at least I was able to appreciate it on a really deep level because of all of that other background information. But I can appreciate how like somebody who doesn't know all of that might feel like they don't get it because there's a lot to it to get.
Yeah, I'm with Ash on a lot of those points that it's a great treat for us, and I did love the sort of Viridian dynamics versus the wrecking machine back and forth from a thing, but it did seem like it wasn't a great trailer to share among friends to hook them, even though the space battle was fucking amazing.
We talked about this in a chat earlier with Ash, and one of the things that we kind of agreed on is that they must have been using a lot of resources on other video material, because some of the other things that's been coming out, the scope stuff, the Upwell stuff, all that lore material has been really, really good. So they might have split the dev hours a little bit and not had the time that they usually have because they rolled out so much the last 3 months, right?
My take on the trailer, I loved it. I thought it was amazing, but the thing is, when it comes to cinematics and trailers and even just general movies, I'm very much a simpleton. I don't break the stuff down. I don't get all philosophical or into it. I'm just like, does it look cool? Is it entertaining? This one definitely did that. I'm like, man, that's a sweet ass space fight. It gets me hyped up to shoot something, and it's like, I'm like, that was a cool trailer.
That's what I love about you. You're so not in your head, which is great.
Yeah, no, I don't want to break that stuff down. It's like, bam, just sit back, grab some popcorn, enjoy it. All right, it's only 2 minutes long. It's over, but it was.
I have been loving all the recast on all the audio streams where people replace the music.
Yeah,
That's still
I
my
did hear
favorite thing.
Templeman's yeah, like in the background constantly. I was like, I had to go watch the Templeman video after that.
Dirk?
I mean, that's what I was gonna say. Kind of about the trailer, right? Is sit back, enjoy the trailer for being what it is, right? It's something that doesn't actually exist in the game with that kind of visual effect. So just enjoy it for what it is. But if you do want to read into it, it does lean more heavily on the destruction side. But we shouldn't be surprised about that. Sexy sells, and destruction is sexy, and it's marketing, right? I mean, again, it's hype. If you're an industrialist, you might be thinking, well, wait a second. I want there to be more emphasis. If you're not only an industrialist, if you're one of these people who believes in kind of world building and things like that, you want to lean a little more heavily on the entire concept of building something and seeing this monumental city in the sky stand. But from a trailer perspective, it's kind of hard to communicate that message that really gives you that kind of gut feeling. So I understand why it leans towards the destruction side.
Yeah, and that was my problem with it, because
at least they didn't get out there and yell, destroy, destroy, destroy again.
My problem with it,
Kill them all.
I put my son on my lap to watch it with me, and he watches all these videos with me, and he's liked every single one. But when he finished watching this one, he said, "How sad," and then he went away.
How sad. You made CCP, you made a baby cry.
Yeah, totally. Like, an angel lost its wings because of you, CCP. Yeah, but
innocence is over.
I do think like this game has to be more complex than just build something so that I can come and destroy it. Like, that can't be the theme, and that's what this thing reeked of to me, which was, look at how beautiful a citadel is. Cheer for it. Okay, now the thing you're cheering for gets destroyed. Like, I was wanting the citadel to win the fight or something,
I still want to change the audio out and some of the videos so we can actually have a Viridian Dynamics ad at the front. And do the whole friendship is stealing and that kind of thing.
I actually liked the other videos were actually, to me, more inspirational, the ones that showed the features.
I'm laughing at you, Jordan. Anyways,
yeah.
One final thing that I wanted to ask, and we can kind of go around the horn. I'm actually going to start it just so it gives you time to think about it. But for those of you watching on stream, or for Neville, since you were there, what was your favorite? What was your favorite element? Mine, I'm going to say, had nothing to do with EVE. It was Max Singularity's presentation on NASA.
Yes.
Gotta say, total NASA fanboy. Stayed home from school to watch Crippen and Young go up in the first Columbia flight. Stayed home again a few days later to watch them land. And ever since then, like, the shuttle was my baby. I grew up with that thing. Met Krista McAuliffe's family after the Challenger disaster. And watching that every time I see a U.S. space flight, it even there, it just gives you chills.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dirk. I'm super NASA fanboy as well. I go on their site. I watch a lot of their mission stuff. When the New Horizons finally got to Pluto this year, or no, it was last year, I was hyped. I was like checking my phone like every day, looking at the new pictures. Like, oh, it's still a couple pixel dots, but yeah, we're getting there. But I actually just watched his YouTube video today of his presentation at Fanfest. Really awesome. I was there last year at Vegas when he did his asteroid recovery mission presentation, and it was actually the night that for the chateau party, and I was supposed to get in line early to hold a spot, and I was like, I'm waiting until the end of this presentation. If we get in the back of the line, that's my bad. But I'm staying and watching this whole thing till it's done.
Well, I mean, what was crazy about that presentation is, because obviously, look, it's no longer the shuttle program, right? Now it's the Orion program. They're going back to a capsule. When he showed that image of, the capsule landing in the water, right? I mean, and most of you guys are all too young. I was too young to actually see Apollo missions land in the ocean, right? But you can go back to something like The Right Stuff, right? And where they're showing Gus Grissom and what happened there, or not Gus Grissom. Yeah, no, it was right with one of the earlier ones where it went underwater, not in Apollo, but before that. And then now it's like they no longer have a helicopter that's bringing it on board an aircraft carrier. They've got it's the same but different now.
All right, let's end this segment with Neville. You have any last thoughts?
No, I do want to say, related to what Dirk had asked, the Amar Championship, when you were there, was amazing. It was unbelievable. No one expected it to go 5 matches. Close right down to the edge. I bet $20 billion on Keelan, so I was heavily invested in it. It was amazing.
No wonder you're happy.
If you haven't seen it, check out the YouTube video on it.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back in about 4 minutes, and we're going to talk about the market craziness that's happening. We'll talk about Plex, and we'll see you in 4 minutes. Okay, we're close to coming back. Should be about 10 seconds. All right, we're back. Thanks for waiting for the second segment of the show. We're going to talk about markets this time around. And wow, has it been active. So to explain some of the craziness, we have some financial experts here, Caleb, Rivra, and Lockfox. And we'll go ahead and start with Lockfox talking about the Plex crisis, if you want to call it a crisis.
Oh God, please don't. I was hoping not to call it a crisis. And then I pulled today's graphs, and I have to eat all of my words I said on last night's show.
So it is a crisis?
It's complicated. Plex is complicated, man.
Why don't you give us the broad strokes?
2007 was a crisis.
Yeah. Give us the broad strokes on what's going on, and then Rivra has a lot of information on what is going on with Plex.
So there's sort of two pieces of the puzzle. One is that we've been in what could be termed a liquidity crisis ever since skill trading was released. Everybody wants Cash ISK to go participate in the game, and this has been fueled along. First we got the skill trading, and then the Great War broke out, and then Citadels hit, which means that people just want enormous amounts of cash, and the best way to get cash, like that Plex is basically as good as cash, right? And this means that the price of Plex has been falling generally. Now, what happened on Citadel is that we had a flash crash that the price went far beyond the expected slump. So if you guys look at the chart that's on the thing right now, you can see that though this is a 30-day chart, and the prices are slumping slowly and sort of going down a couple million a day, like it's no big deal. And then Citadel hits, and during the first 8 hours, actually no, the first 12 hours, we see the markets go completely in the toilet, and buy orders were in free fall, and panic all around, mass hysteria, cats and dogs living together. That recovered yesterday, and when I went on the show yesterday, I was expecting that we'd be at under 1 billion and sort of tracking to 950 if you guys wanted to get technical about predicting into the future. Unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about the way people feel about a flash crash, and so we have a lot of people panicking.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with the people panicking. I would say there's additional things with the Plex prices happening at the moment. There were a lot of people expecting Fax SP to be refunded tomorrow, so then they could use the SP to put into the new skills to finish off training up their Light Fighters 5 and whatever. And then CCP decided not to do that, and so then people needed to buy injectors to make up the difference in those skills. So that definitely played into it on the first day as well. And a lot of it is, people panicking, and the markets, because they changed the taxes, there's been a lot of bugs on the market. People have been, on the first day, definitely really, really worried about setting buy orders, because there were rumors and there were screenshots and there were reports that if you updated your order, then you'd suddenly get the whole market, the whole broker fee taken from your order again. And there was a screenshot of someone with a 200,000 order being charged 7 million in broker fees. So this put people off placing buy orders, which then causes the buy orders to fall. And people started selling as well, because it seemed that there weren't so many problems with selling stuff. So the sell orders were pushed down by that, and the buy orders were pushed down because there just weren't so many happening.
Do we know if those were bugs or if they actually counted?
So the buy orders should still be are valid, right? But the fees, I'm not sure if we've heard the last of it, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of bugs I'm still seeing, and some of them are UI bugs. Like on the first day, I was I had 3 or 4 orders up, and it said in my wallet that my broker fee was 6%. By the time I listed all my Tech 2 salvage, it told me I had a 197% broker fee, which puts you off doing it just in case, even though you check and it's fine, and there was lag on the market, so you couldn't see whether you had a broker fee gone through or not. So yeah, these sort of things stop people getting involved in the market. And then because with the new fees, the Plex price hadn't adjusted, so it was actually a negative margin that you'd be getting if you were trying to flip Plex on day one.
Yikes.
Additionally, one of the things that's very interesting about people that collect Plex as a way of preserving ISK is that a lot of them are rather older characters, and so they bought Plex perhaps as low as 300 or 400 million. And so it dropping to 900 million, they don't see it as a loss of 300 million necessarily from its height of 1.2. It's just cashing out and they've already doubled, or potentially already have a gain in spite of the lower value.
I largely disagree with that point. Plex has been a snowballing effect for the last 3 or 4 years of, if you want to hold, like, it's been stupid to hold cash, like liquid cash, in the long term. It's been, if you're not going to use the ISK today, it's smarter to go put it into Plex, because Plex will always rise. And I know that I've said something similar in the past, so feel free to send your hate mail to Prosper Market Show. The deal of it, though, is that a lot of its value is sort of, it's the same mass hysteria that you see around gold, where, oh, well, gold can never go down until it does, and it takes out everybody's stuff, and everybody panics because gold is a panicky market in general. And so I don't know if there's, at the 1 billion mark, I expect the majority of Plexes that are actively tradable were bought north of 800 million, probably in the 1 billion range. That's a really hard number to go figure out, but I would believe that the bulk of them were there. And so the people who have billion ISK Plexes aren't losing much, and it's still basically a 1-to-1. But the sort of people who've been active, especially through last fall, where we hit 1.3 or 1.2 billion ISK, are the kind of people who hold maybe 10 to 50 billion ISK in that kind of reserve, are panicking because they are losing their 20 or 30% of their skin basically over the last 3 months. And I know that sucks, but I don't know how to help those people.
Let me interrupt here to correct. Hold on, Caleb, 1 second.
Ways, right?
Hold on, Caleb, 1 second. I just want to interrupt because I skipped this in the intro, and I should have put it. The Crossing Zebras has an article by Ash Dorothy, who's on our panel, about the Plex, and that just came out today. And soon, maybe as early as tomorrow, TMC is going to have another article that has an explanation of what the Plex buyer or seller, I think it was a buyer, what he set out to do, and Rivra will actually tell us about that a little bit later. Go ahead, Caleb, tell us what you're going to say.
Well, I was just going to point out that we are in a time that's very paradoxical, because on one side we get all these novel things that increases the demand for ISK. So everyone wants ISK and they want to cash out, which means that the Plex is going to tank in price, but the purchasing power of the ISK for anything that is not currently novel is going to be higher. So if you're buying anything except the new items, you're actually potentially going to get more for your money. Whereas because of course, speculation and the novelty, you get the standard initial market graph where everything starts off crazy high and then it levels out and finds its normal price. But in that period, anything that is not in that novel range is going to be more cheap. And then when you add the tax thing, you are looking at actually most of the people that are cashing in are going to benefit if they are not going all magpie and getting there first to the markets. So it's really not that unhealthy. It's only unhealthy for people that have stored their value in Plex. It's similar to what you see in Morphy, that it's still wibbly wobbly because it's two of the favorites that people have had. They think that Morphy is always going to somehow hold the value compared to the rest of the mineral basket. And then it ties into what Aerith was trying to explain on the Meta show, that prices want to sort of stay where they are. So you get this, it's kind of like a price elasticity phenomenon where it's kind of going to dip, but then it gets picked up by people actually putting them up because they can actually pull a better price because people now have the ISK to pay for it. So it's a lot of factors at once, and we need to find a new normal. And I think it's going to take at least maybe 2 or 3 months, because we also need to get the citadels in game actively being used before we can actually say where we're going to land.
We should explain that Aerith is the financial guy for Goon Swarm, and he has a cabal that kind of a little council that actually does all the financials for the Imperium and Goon Swarm in particular, and they trade in huge amounts back and forth. There's also Caleb.
It was just because he was trying to explain the thing where if one mineral drops, another one will try to pick up price by becoming more expensive, and it's going to be based on which one is the next one that is in low supply. It's also tying into when you're seeing people trying to manipulate the market and buying out things like the Tech 2 materials, where they're going to take the one that has the lowest volumes and stuff, right?
Yeah, but I wanted to just point out that there is, like, Goon Swarm and the Imperium has financial guys that look at the markets and are always, figuring out where to put their money and where the future is and stuff like that. But Caleb, you also have an old group of friends that does the same thing, right? Caleb?
You were roboting.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't get it. You were roboting a lot.
You got all Dirk up in there.
Get Dirk.
I think I heard you say a bad word, too.
Oh, yeah. I snuck them all in while I was roboting. Okay, I'm sorry, but Aerith has a council that looks at financials and figures out where to invest. And that's for Goon Swarm and those guys. You also have a group of friends that kind of serves to advise each other, right?
Yeah, but we're more loosely affiliated. That's the whole point of the lounge. It was to create a social venue for usually traders and invested speculator types. They're very solo operators. So it was to have a place to talk about things and trade some ideas. And it's basically, well, it's illegal in the real world, but here there's no regulation, so no one would be able to stop us, right? So ironically, I chose the name the SCC Lounge because the SCC is supposed to be a regulatory body in EVE, and it doesn't work. It doesn't actually regulate anything like insider trading.
It's just interesting. It's just interesting that because, okay, this is like talking about lore. Talking about markets and lore is incredibly complex and high-minded, and so for most people, they kind of glaze over and check out when you start talking about what is, what isn't, and what is speculation. But what's very approachable is the fact that there are these financial masters watching the market and investing trillions of ISK in these things.
Yeah, but
well,
that's really storing your value, right? You're playing a game that's sensitive to industry and to market, and it's just a different game. It exists in most MMOs, as far as I know. It's just that in other games, there's not the same consequence and the same real ecology that you have in EVE.
That's the richness of EVE Online, and that's what really gets to me when people say, like, I'm really good at EVE because I know how to fit a ship and destroy another ship. Like, that is only one aspect of being good at EVE. The other one is organizing. The other one is commerce. There's all kinds of different things, management, and even just leadership in general. That is something that you can measure I'm winning EVE by.
And you could say that when it comes to what you might call top tier, I know that sounds extremely arrogant and elitism, but then it becomes extremely incestuous, right? It's everyone knows everyone. So in things like the markets who the big cash holders, most of them know each other. The same in the casinos, they seem to all know each other. And in the news scene, it seems that everyone is affiliated and cross-referencing each other and appearing on different platforms. So I think the end level is not that huge. It's not big enough to really segregate and separate. That's why you're seeing this. And the lounge then just cartel-wise enforces this even further, right? Minas started out there before getting elected to the CSM and was talking a lot with us. But then as he became famous, suddenly he had to tone down his appearance and so as to not.
So that's Minna, who was
Can't hang with you guys anymore.
Yeah, Minna was a protege to Aerith inside of the Goon Swarm cabal. Oh, but it's it's kind of like media, right, Dirk? Because you're you're all over the place, and it's limited, and you don't tell everybody everything because you want to save something for the next either article or appearance.
I pretty much just repeat myself everywhere.
Yep.
Well, we're glad you do.
Well, I mean, here's a question though. Okay, so we're kind of in a bear market territory at this point on Plex, right? I mean, is anybody willing to call a bottom here? Or are we in kind of a catch a falling knife position? I mean, do you think that there's something that's really driving this downwards? There are no articles out there going, Plex is too damn low right now.
So personally, I have a stop target of 950, and I'm probably going to eat those words because now that I've said it, that means that will be a target to beat to make me wrong. So go ahead, but
let's play prices right.
Yeah, like I get it. So personally, thanks to Dirk over here, I'm a big fan of using the RSI to really tell you how fast something can fall. And to go under 950 would require some serious effort and black swan events, blah 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 blah. But we could slip under that. I think that to say a price as of June 1, I still think we're close to $1 billion. I have a hard time believing that we can really keep the downward momentum and hit like 850 and go into full free fall without completely fucking up so much of the game.
I think
hold on before you hold on.
Trader and a longer term investor, though, right? And I mean, if you were a longer term investor, we have not broken trend.
Well, what I wanted to touch upon is the thing that if you look at the players that are now in EVE, and if you consider who is on breaks or who's left and who went out and got real life stuff, right? Got their first kits and all this. This is a generational game, so it's very, very different from other games. The ones that stay behind might actually be the ones that are younger and have not gotten that far yet in their real life, right? So if I compare to some of the old players that I know, the reason that they're not in EVE anymore is because they have other engagements, right? And if they start creeping back, you're going to see not the 16-year-old with no wallet. You're going to see someone that might actually be at a point with a successful career and is willing to pay for the time that they don't have. That means that we're going to see more wallet warriors.
But that's the position we're already in. Like as long as we have this sort of cash is king mentality going on, which this is why I have a June 1st target on a lot of my predictions, is that we've had hit after hit after hit that's kept the ISK velocity just historically high. I mean, Quant was complaining that he had to completely blow out his scales on the ISK velocity, which we'll get back to in a second. I do want to talk about ISK velocity. The thing is,
please do.
I have a hard time believing that we're going to have the steam in novelty things to do coming out in June, July, and August over the summer doldrums, where we can really keep up that cash mentality. Now, I don't know about the rise back up. I mean, saying that it won't go lower is not the same as saying it will rise, because I still think that there are enough wrenches in the works for ISK generation that the sort of symptoms that got us into 1.3, 1.4, 1.5 territory, I don't think are going to stand. So I think that the fall spike that we tend to see will be subdued, but that it's a little early to be really making those predictions.
Well, I mean, here's a question on the demand.
Let's let Dirk go and then Caleb.
Well, sorry, I just want to. Do we think that there has been a shift on the demand side of the equation? The people who use Plex for its underlying use. You buy it with ISK and you use it for whatever it is they're using it, mainly game time.
So the actual ISK Plex destruction, like consumption, real actual consumption.
Your next, Caleb.
I think is staying relatively stable, probably up thanks to skill trading, but I don't think that's going to give sustained downward pressure. It's the desire for cash ISK that's really driving the prices today.
I think that's where we agree a lot, because I know that there's been a huge volume of Plex traded because of the skill point stuff. But my point is that if I'm not entirely wrong, what CCP is rolling out and all these new changes is going to create a popularity. So it's not unlikely that you will see 1 million users when you look at all brands come December. That's a lot of cross-pollination, right? There's going to be a lot of people from Valkyrie trying EVE. There's going to be a lot of people from New Dust creeping into EVE. When all these players come in, and then the old players start seeing all this momentum, you're going to see a lot more wallets being opened. And I don't think I'm that far off when I say that it could actually go to 650, 700 million by the end of the year. And you will see things like injectors and the whole skill point market might actually slump a little bit, because right now it's very novelty driven. They will start focusing more on utility and less on vanity. And the old players will have finished their stuff, and the new ones will not have the same demand. The diminishing return mechanism will dry up. They will stop doing it because it's not worth it.
Okay.
So there's a lot of factors. I don't think that.
Let me cut you off right there, Caleb. I want at this point to ask everybody in chat to go ahead and write down what their bottom number is going to be for Plex, how low it's going to go. And I want to ask.
Can I just jump in?
Yes, of course. Yeah, I was going to go to you.
I know Lockfox and Caleb have been talking a lot about the Plex prices, and I've just checked in Jita, and it's 942 on sells at the moment, so it's gone below 950.
Okay, so buy.
That means I shut off your video. No, anyway.
So I would say that we've got the weekend people haven't come in yet. After the first big influx of people after the patch haven't come in, and they might want to get hold of injectors, and then they might see the Plex price and jump, because a lot of the Plex are held by guys who've seen it on Reddit or on the forums that, oh my god, buy Plex, it's going to get really high, and now they're losing what's a large amount of this to them, and they're dumping. And I think it might start recovering within a week or two. So I don't think it's going to hit Caleb's levels. It's already gone below Lockfox's, but I think probably the middle of next week it should start recovering again.
We always love the retail investors late in the game.
The most people here are saying 750. It looks like it's kind of the average. Some 600s and
that's
stuff like that.
so much. That's so far to fall, guys.
I know.
How many percentage points you'd have to lose every day to get there?
Hold on a second. I want to shift gears. Ash, if you have one more thing, that's fine, and then we'll shift gears to the Plex story.
Well, yeah. I'll just say a quick note and then throw out a bit of tinfoil for everybody to laugh at. So my problem with a lot of these theories is that it doesn't look like the quantity of skill injectors being purchased in Jita has changed significantly. It basically has gone between 2,000 to 6,000 per day for as long as I've looked back, and that's consistent with what we've seen since Citadel. So it doesn't actually look like people are using it to buy injectors. So I guess my question is, are we just seeing Iron Bank trying to get a Palatine Citadel and cashing out his money and using this as a distraction?
Let's ask him. He's in the chat room.
Well,
there you go.
We did ask him when we told him about that. He was saying he's like he never heard of it, and we told him about it, what was it
That was EVE. That was EVE.
Trillion?
Yeah.
That was EVE, not Iron Bank. They're two different people.
That was EVE. Yeah, he said he was gonna try and get one.
Another thing that people have overlooked with Citadels is that, and the Plex this week, is that a lot of people saw the hull price, so they knew it was 6 billion, 70 billion, 700 billion. They forgot about modules and rigs and everything else, and some of those modules are in the several billion range, so people needed to liquidate quickly as well. So I think that played into the Plex price.
Sure, there's a lot of new capital stuff people want to buy. They want to be liquid so they can buy all this stuff. Okay, so let's talk about what we were looking at. And there was a controversy about CCP actually trying to stabilize the free fall of Plex. And Reaver, you know about that. Can you tell us what happened there?
I can tell you that it wasn't CCP. It's actually a single player who placed the so-called wall of Plex that was originally at 949 million and now is down at 849. There were about 18,000 Plex on the market from one player placing buy orders.
And he actually and he's the one that's written this contribution piece to TMC that we're going to have out shortly. And he said that he would have gone to hundreds of trillions of dollars if he could get investors. Were you involved with some of that?
I was involved in, I knew what his method was before the patch, and I was involved in coordinating between him and some investors to try and get, he was trying to get around $1 trillion-isk to be able to invest into the market.
And so he did get investors, but not as many as he wanted.
Yeah, he wound up with a fraction of what he wanted to get. But with that fraction of ISK, he was able to place, it was over 18 trillion worth of Plex orders. I think in total, it's just about 30,000 buy orders for Plex that he has up.
So it's 18 trillion in Plex buy orders. That's amazing. And it was going to go much higher.
He's destroying my freaking ranges on my sexy graph. I freaking hate that.
But that's really interesting because you actually third-partied information. Like we have this thing called third party when somebody, you can't trust people in EVE. So what you do is you give it to someone who's trustworthy, the money, and they hold it in escrow. And then that person also receives, say, the Titan, and they hold it, and then they make the switch because they're trusted. And that's called third partying. I don't know what that is, exchange or something.
See, at first I thought you were going to go with the other definition of third party.
Yeah,
like,
no.
She just swooped in and stole it from both
Yeah,
of them.
just shot everybody up who was there. No. And that's really interesting phenomenon's happened. That's how Kribba made his name as the most trustworthy person in EVE because he was the one that brokered those deals all the time. But to find out they actually happen to financial information is really interesting. That's the first time I've seen it.
Well, it's a practice that's very used in the MD. It's how you have to handle most loans. But you have to have some sort of third person handling it.
You mean you just don't answer an ad in Jita?
Only if it's for double.
When you do these financial products, you can do shares and you can do IPOs and you will do a business plan and all these things. Then usually there's auditors and there's third-party people handling the escrow and all these things, the collaterals basically. So you can't lose more than a certain amount. So it's like a pawn shop when it comes to most bonds. But some of them are of course uncollateralized, and then there's no third party except maybe in the fact that these third-party people are grinding reputation and trust, so they will be part of picking apart the business plan, and so in that sense, making sure that the investors are getting their money, even though they are not being secured.
So, Riva, you're one of those trusted people?
Well, I wasn't until this week. What actually happened was there was a guy made a post on the EVE forums, the market discussions, and he's put up a post saying he wanted to pawn 26 characters because he'd found this thing that can make him a shitload of ISK on patch day. And he, of course, wouldn't tell anyone what this thing was, so people were dismissing it a bit, and he said at one point that he'd find someone to talk to basically hold the secret and verify it and say that, yeah, this method isn't an exploit, it's not a bug, and it will work. And so he came to me and asked me if I would go over it with him and then just verify it for other people, whether it was valid or not.
So you were kind of like you were rating a bond, like, you know. Dirk, you know about this stuff, don't you?
Bit?
Yeah, like, you know, like you would say, yeah, this is worth buying, this is not worth buying, and that obviously it crashed the U.S. economy and world economy when untrustworthy people did.
I mean, this whole thing here, this guy has kind of reminded me of George Soros back when he led the charge to kind of break the pound sterling back in the 90s. I mean, this is what's so amazing. I mean, number one, we've always talked about how amazing the EVE market is in general, right? But there is nothing that to me anyways, that is more realistic with market trading than the Plex market. It is so big and so liquid, and the volume on it is so strong that it's why when LockFox does his charts and he's using and he's using the type of analysis that he is in terms of MACD and relative strength and things like that, right? That it works so well on Plex as opposed to other areas of the market where it's not quite the same.
I will say that this was different from usual financial things, as I wasn't guaranteeing that the guy would pay anything. I was just verifying his method, and the reason he needed the main thing that I was third partying was that I wouldn't actually tell anyone this secret. And I got quite a lot of offers during the week.
To break your silence?
How much will you sell it for? What is this? From random people across EVE, because some guy offering the crazy percentage rates he was offering, he was basically offering that he would pay back 80% interest and all transfer fees on 26 characters within a month or so. So people really wanted to know how to make this easy-isk, and my job was just to say it's okay, and then just make sure no one found out about it before patch day.
Well, so just for clarity, you approved of his method?
Yeah, I said that, yeah, it worked.
Yeah, she's, so how many people approached you, by the way, to say, hey, can you get me in on this secret?
I would say it wasn't a huge amount. I had 10 to 15 people convoying me in Slack. I had people convoying me from Fanfest trying to find out what it was. I had people in game trying to ask me questions about it to find out what it was. It was just a week of guessing games and me having to give extremely vague answers that sounded like they were saying a lot and weren't actually saying anything.
Neville, was that you? Were you writing her saying, what's the secret?
No, that was not me. And you wouldn't believe me if I told you the truth anyway.
What's so amazing, and I listen to Lockfox's show a lot. But what's so amazing is when you have a group of people that sit there and get out here and they talk about what's going on sort of behind the scenes, right? For some of us, this is like listening to Elise Randolph and people like that talk about PvP in the game, right? How they're fitting their ships, how they're doing this, right? And they don't quite talk about it around Alliance tournament time, right? This is kind of one of those moments where there's something going on out there, and there are some real geniuses in this game on a whole number of different levels. But the financial side of things is absolutely amazing in this game.
Yeah, it's underrated. Just kind of the people who know, and then there's everybody else.
Yeah, and the special thing with this one was, the guy didn't have 30 trillion ISK or even 17 trillion ISK, or as some people were guessing on the forums, 4.5 trillion ISK to invest in all those buy orders.
He did not have that money?
No, he placed 30,000 buy orders for Plex without having 30 trillion ISK. He put in between 60 and 100 billion ISK to get all those buy orders placed.
Is that possible? Did he find a way to?
Yeah, it's very possible. It sounds complicated, and I'll try and explain it very clearly, very simply. There's a skill in the game called margin trading, and every level of margin trading that you have allows you to not have to put as much money up front to place an order. And at margin trading 5, this takes it down to 24% of the price you have to put up. So he would have only had to put up, if he had a buy order for 100 million ISK for 100 items, he would only have to put up 24 million ISK in order to place that order on the market. So that's where people got the idea that he'd paid 4.5 trillion ISK to place these orders. But there's another step that he did beyond that. Everyone knows about margin scams in the game. And in the game, what happens is someone puts up 24% of the price of an item, so 24 million in the case of the 100 million order. Then they sell to themselves for 24 items out of the 100. And then that leaves the rest of the order up there. And because you sell to yourself, you get the ISK back. Minus your broker fee, of course. So every time this guy placed an order, he sold himself 24% of it, and then he cleared all the escrow out of his wallet. So when he looked in his wallet, it said amount in escrow 0, amount to cover 76% of the buy order. And then of course he got the 24, say he had 100 plex up, he would have got the 24 plex back into his hangar that he could then use on his next order. And so he was able to place all these orders, and every time he's only got the broker fee tied up in the market, and the broker fee for 18,000 plex is about 60 billion or so. So that's the amount of ISK that he needed to place those on the market.
We've got what I think is about 20 minutes left here, Matterall. I do want to shift the topic of conversation a bit to what people think about the introduction of Citadel's CCP or EVE Online. The Twitter account put out a question the other day about, how do you think that market hubs are going to shift because of this? And I definitely want to have time with these guys to be able to hit on that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do that now. We're finishing up with this. There'll be an article on TMC from the guy that actually did it, and he explains how he did it. And so you can read about that later. But let's go ahead and shift to what Dirk was just talking about.
I still strongly think that the largest impact, and I actually just realized even further how large of an impact Citadels is going to have in wormhole space. The additionally, like we've heard all the other things where like, you know, Citadels is such a quality of life improvement. But the thing I thought about just today was, which I mean, maybe other people have figured it out already, but with no local, you don't know if there are people and how many people are docked in the Citadel. So you don't know if they're ready to defend themselves. So like, for instance, if you move your scouts or whatever to go watch the Citadel prior to it coming out of reinforcement, you have no idea and no real way of knowing what kind of defenses are being amassed inside of the Citadel. You don't even know if somebody's manning the Citadel until it starts shooting. So, you know, I think that it's going to have a huge impact in the way that intel is gathered in whole space and how it's operating. And that's even without the markets.
Okay, but what about the markets?
If I may add the high sec aspect of that, because I know that many people don't really think that this will happen, and they didn't think that it would happen to industry, and to some extent it didn't. But I believe that you're going to see a lot of Citadels in high sec, especially because of the market benefits. I know it might not seem like much, but 1% when you are trading trillions a month is very much important. So you will see someone put up, and you only need to put up a large, right, to then have the coverage of your market orders to the nearby hubs. You can just set range at 1, and you will still be competing with the extreme NPC station rates. So people will do this, and investing a large Citadel for 10, 15, 20 semi-serious market traders will make that money, and it will be worth it. So I am expecting to see a lot of it, and it will most likely cause a lot of wars. But since asset safety for the user, not the owner, is pretty much secure, you don't have to pay anything. You lose 5 days of return of investment, but that's something you can tank if you have enough of them. You just need to have your assets spread out on, say, 5 locations, right?
You have to buy them back when you get moved, though.
I mean, well,
no, not in the
that's
same
assuming
system.
they
If it's
take
to
it
an
down.
NPC station in the same system, it's free.
Well, that's assuming that they take it down or it's destroyed. What if they just lock you out? Where does the trust issue come involved?
Then you can use asset safety as well, but it takes 5 days.
You can use the asset safety thing if they
Yes, they
cut
can't
off your
deny you
access
access to your stuff. If they deny you to dock, you can then activate asset safety. And I think that's a little bit of a problem because I think some will abuse it and use it as some sort of teleport feature. So I'm not sure how CCP is going to avoid that. It's already been talked about how a lot of asset creep is and lockdown of assets using this in null is now going to be possible to avoid, because now they can kind of put up a large and then evacuate their stuff, even though they are surrounded and things like that. So a lot of game mechanics are going to change, and a lot of the economy is going to change because those assets will now get into the ecosystem, and that's going to be very interesting to follow. So I am expecting some huge changes. I think we're going to see some sort of nerfing of loot and straining on raw material stuff, maybe something on the time frames on industry in production. They have to tweak these things to match this new normal.
I have a quick.
I agree with Astarothi that wormholes are going to be where the big changes are, especially if someone manages to get up an Excel inside a wormhole. It's going to be fairly difficult for someone to take that down, especially if they want to get the large ships in there. That's just, that can be made very difficult to happen. So wormholes are where the biggest changes are with Citadels.
I had a question for dealing with what Caleb was saying about the lower tax rate you can set on the Citadels, which are going to make it definitely a enticing way to get people to buy from the Citadel rather than the JITAs and the trade hubs. But will that just cause different trade hubs? Are there going to be like certain specific Citadels that will become like new trade hubs in high sec that are player owned, or is it just be spread out? Because I bet there's a lot of people that would be like, yeah, it costs more at JITA, but everything is all in one spot. I just have to go make one trip instead of go to this Citadel to buy this, this one to buy that.
It's complicated.
It's buy orders. It's the people that are competing on buy order side to get the resources from the people that come in and sell to the traders. They will be able to use ranged buys instead. They will be able to surround JITA and Amar and other trade hubs with Citadel. And you just need to have one range. That means that you're not going to get your assets spread that much. You're going to get the majority from the hub still. So you're going to save that. As a selling location, it's not that positive, but it can actually be a benefit because you can still compete when you then amass the stuff that might get delivered not in the hub. So because you have one range, right, that you might get stuff from the other system, you can then bring that to your Citadel, and then you can resell that there with the benefit of the lower tax. So instead of, so you will see maybe a slow and very gradual move away from hub centricity, but the hubs will still play the major part when it comes to volume, but not necessarily to price wars. Exactly like in the real world, the New York Stock Exchange sets the price of raw materials and stuff, but they do not do the price war in the retail shops.
So the one thing that we're missing though is that to unseat a major trade hub, last I heard, the Citadels won't show up in any of the API feeds, which makes any of the automation that makes a lot of that centralization work. A lot of that, like the whole point of that automation is that I know what I'm getting and I know what I'm paying, and I can do all of my work ahead of time and then just do the clicks to execute the order. And you have to do a lot more manual work to be able to leverage some of those options. Caleb and I and all the other SCC guys have really been dreaming about some of the options. And there are some really cool ideas if you can get the pieces in the right places and do the legwork required. But you still have to sort of overcome to unseat Jita, Dodixie, Amar, and all the others. You have to you have to have an ease of access that I don't think Citadels can provide straight out. They're going to be a great complement and a great and serve some great niches, but they're not going to be a replacement.
So here's an idea that I just thought of when it comes to like the large Citadels with the market. If you have an industrial wing, you could actually set up a market where it's like a beacon for people to bring things to you, right? So you could set your interest rate super low and other people's interest rates high, and then put out these big buy orders for minerals. You know, there's a lot of these industrial guys that have corps that bring them, you know, that basically have buyback programs for ore, but you could actually have like a public buyback program effectively through a large Citadel.
And now I'm going to disclose something that might be something that people can really use for something. When you have a population of Citadels within your range, you are basically going to be getting indirectly an interbus system. The delivery is 5 days, but it's an interbus. So if you allow your assets to mature in the Citadels where players might actually prefer using their own Citadels, so they will come in and they will actually sell to the traders. The traders' assets will grow in the Citadels, and when 5 days pass, they can then teleport them directly to the nearest NPC station. And they can do that consolidated, right? So if there's 10 stations, they can just consolidate all of it at the top station, and then eventually start doing logistics, outsourcing it to Public Courier or to Red Frog and Push. So you're going to see a
for items. You know, I think it's one of the reasons why there's so much uncertainty in the market. Nobody really knows how Citadels are going to affect the marketplaces.
I definitely disagree with Ash. They're not going to fix this. If they do that, they're very stupid, because this is exactly the incentive that we need. This is going to be what drives the income levels for the Citadel owners, that the marketeers are then offering these services. So the 5-day interbus is perfect. This is exactly what we've been wanting all the time, because the value, potential loss in return of investment over those 5 days is a risk. So there is a risk involved, and you have to wait. You can't just benefit from it instantly. You can't buy something at a Citadel and then instantly get it shipped to the NPC station. That's not going to be possible.
Yeah, but Uturbium talked about in the original discussion of these kinds of structures that the interbus system would be established as a separate feature, which is yet to be implemented. So I would expect that to change and be made more of a not a mechanic that as a result of the existing mechanics, but an actual mechanic in and of itself.
It will be interesting to see how this shakes out. I mean, I've seen some complaints out there from, like, you know, Toro Bushido from Marmite regarding kind of what's going on with the whole war deck stuff and things like that now with the watch list. It's going to be interesting to see if groups like that get involved with war decking these things, and if they're hired to get involved with there's now a way of potentially taking out your competition. Yeah, by destroying or interdicting their facility.
Money
right?
making machine.
Well, because you've got the trust aspect of, well, at least what I thought you had was the trust aspect, but maybe you don't. But what you have to be concerned about, to some extent, is whether or not the whole war deck stuff and things like that. Now with the watch list, it's going to be interesting to see if groups like that get involved with war decking these things, and if they're hired to get involved with there's now a way of potentially taking out your competition. Yeah, by destroying or interdicting their facility.
Money
right?
making machine.
Well, because you've got the trust aspect of, well, at least what I thought you had was the trust aspect, but maybe you don't. But what you have to be concerned about, to some extent, is whether or not you're working out of an operation that maybe can be destroyed, and therefore,
And I have to just get in on the structures that are coming in further down the line. What we're going to see now is the Citadel War is going to be, at least in hindsight, very market hub war based. So this is going to be the market hub wars. The next thing we're going to see is denial of industrialist competition. So that you're going to get an industrialist war, and even more awesome, in my personal opinion, is what you're going to see next when they introduce the billboards that player can put up. You're going to see the first advertising war, and that's going to be amazing.
No, it's not. The ads are terrible. I'm just being cynical, but because I like to fly in space. Okay, first of all, if I played like WoW or something, or I just never like to see the little mannequins dancing in front of the the store I was going into to buy stuff.
Well, they're not going to just be advertisements. You're going to see like statues and monuments.
That's what I mean. But it's like you can't account for taste, and so everybody else's like commercial is killing
Red Light District.
Yeah, well,
you mean we get just as good commercials as we get on every other EVE stream with like Alliance tournament ones?
I'm just waiting for the first one to put dick butt on there.
Exactly, like that's gonna happen, and it's like, and they're gonna sneak it in somehow, and it's gonna, and then it's gonna get laughed at, and it's just like, but whatever, it's one person's immersion is not EVE, so whatever.
There is also something to note, which is that if you are using something as a market, it's not 5 days, because if the place gets attacked, as Nullaber said last time he was here, if the place gets attacked, you have 24 hours before the first reinforcement, and after that first reinforcement, it shuts off all of the services. If they fail to protect it in that first reinforcement.
So it might be long.
And then those services remain shut off until the end of the week. So it's 6 days of no services to that Citadel, and then it gets destroyed, and then there's asset safety.
So Marshmallow points out that she wants to hear from Rivra about taste, since apparently men don't have good taste, which I can probably agree with.
I have no idea about taste, but I was going to say something about something Nullarbor said, talking about citadels and structures, and playing back on what you were saying about how you don't like seeing the dolls dancing around outside the Orgrimmar auction house. Nullarbor said the other day in Slack that he was all romantic, and I'm just going to grab his direct quote. He said, "I want you to jump into the system and have the sky light up with all sorts of structures doing different things. Some attackable, some not, depending on the time of day. Some requiring huge fleets to take down, some a small gang and harass. You guys talk about space cities. I'm thinking about cities that span across a solar system." And I think that's where they're heading with it, with all the different structures. And I actually quite like that vision that they have.
See, I agree with you that I like that vision, but I'm not sure if what they're announcing matches that, because they've already taken one of the structure, or two of the functions that we expected two different structures for, and we're getting one structure for it. And then also they're saying that basically the Citadel kind of style is the basic style that we're going to get. And so it kind of makes me wonder, because if you've got the Citadel, which is military, and then you've got the Industrial, which is industry, like what are the other things going to function like? Which is, I think, still a big question. And I wonder whether or not, like, because they said that we can fit those modules, so eventually Citadels could do industry, just not as good as industrial platforms. And so I wonder with that homogenization, if we really are going to see like sprawling cities, or are you going to just see 2 or 3 and call it good?
I mean, I think that the industrial structures, the difference between them and doing it in a citadel will be convenience. If you need to build a ship in a hurry, then you'll do it. Might do it in your citadel because you're not. It's more defensive, so you're at war or whatever. But if you need to build for profit, then you'll use the correct structure. And they haven't ruled out bringing out another research structure. They only combined the two so that we could have the industry and research out at the same time.
Yeah, in fact, in the structures roundtable, they explicitly said, yes, we're doing one now, but our intention is to break it out into 2 in the future.
Oh, good. I didn't catch that. That fixes my problem.
And just to tease Draken a little bit, if I'm not entirely mistaken, I think when all of them was sort of rolled out, or at least a lot of them are rolled out, this will tie directly into SOV. Because Citadel seemed to be not just the central hub, it seems to be the one that's going to be the most defensible. It's going to be the one that you have to take down to really make an impact on the SOV ownership. And then all these scattered entities, regardless of whether you have to actively deny them. I'm pretty sure that they're tying it into SOV in a way that is a lot like the symbiosis or the synergy between what we have now and what we had before. So we're going to see some sort of active structure grind. You have to take down these structures to get SOV.
All right, so let's wrap up the topic. I did want to ask Neville one more question. If EVE University, are they going to put up a Citadel?
I am not a director of EVE University. I have no way of knowing, and the answer is probably yes.
Do you think it'll get taken down right away from your experience with EVE?
Yes, it will, and it will be a learning experience, and everyone will cheer, and they'll do it again. So
awesome.
Just wait.
All right, guys. If you don't have any more comments on this, let's just go around the board. And
the first Citadel should be named Prince.
I said Eterbium, but okay.
Prince or the symbol?
Yeah, let's put the symbol on there.
I don't know if that's in the Unicode standard.
I'll give you guys, it's not necessarily a shout out, but if there's something that you want to plug, or if there's something that it's your soapbox for a few seconds, and we'll just start with Lockfox and go around.
So I guess just tune into the EVE Prosper show. We're live on Fridays at 0300 at EVE Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and our blog. We're going to be trying to get a little bit more content out this May, so get subbed.
Great. Neville?
I want to say hello to all my new corp mates in the Signal Cartel. Thanks for welcoming me aboard. And also I want to encourage everyone to read my blog at nibblesmith.com.
I second that. I personally want to thank Caleb and Riva and Lockfox for joining us. Thanks for giving us a whole new dimension to EVE that's normally not covered on most media shows and stuff like that. Thank you for coming, and we're going to have you back at some point. Ash?
Yeah, I don't really have much to say besides I do plan on coming back to being a very much more active leadership role in EVE, so watch this space. Other than that, no, actually I got nothing besides... we do have a lore update that we're recording tomorrow for Hydrostatic. We've actually downgraded it from a lore panel to a lore update. That is partially because we actually expected a little bit more lore information out of Fanfest than we got, and so I feel like there's not quite as much information as we thought there would be, and a lot of the stuff that we were talking about in the last lore panel, we don't really want to just rehash. But also we want to spend a little bit of time to make sure we give like the most accurate content as possible for what we do have. So we've changed it from a lore panel tomorrow to a lore update. Expect to see that soon. And then we are also thinking about like what the long-term goals are of the lore panels and lore updates for Hydrostatic Podcast. So expect to hear me asking for feedback. And if you do have feedback, please tweet me at Ashrathi and let me know what you think, what you do and don't like.
Go ahead, Drayden.
Yeah, I'll just plug Open Comms. It's a show Dirk and I and BC Chocolate Rain Scare Panda do on Thursday night, same time as this show. It's 0100 EVE. I think it's like 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific. It's a drinking show, so bring some drinks.
And apparently it has a name now.
Yeah.
We have a name this time. I
Or
got
he
it.
remembers it.
Yeah, I got it right. It was a rough last night.
I just want to thank everybody who came tonight. This was, I'm going to just be perfectly honest. This was my most enjoyable show that we've done so far. I think we had a really interesting conversation that we don't normally get a chance to hear. There's a lot of times we hear about PvP. There's a lot of times that we hear about kind of those glitzy things that are out there. But this is the shit that's going on behind the scenes out there. I think it's great. I want to thank everybody that came here tonight. I want to thank the listeners for being, so active in the chat and participating. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah, we did okay. We ended up with 270 people watching live. There'll be a lot of people listening to the podcast, which we'll put out in the next day or two. So that's a really good sign because the topic was very high level, high-minded, but I think people are still interested in it. And that's really amazing because normally people just need to know like what to shoot. What do I aim and press F1 at? Also, Neville, thanks very much for showing up. We appreciate your view. We'd like to have you back on the show in the future too, if that's all right.
Thanks for having me. I'd love to come back.
Great. Okay, guys, and thanks for watching. We'll have this out in podcast pretty soon. And anything else? Am I missing anything? Watch Open Comms. All right.
No, we got Drunk Canadian coming up next playing Kerbal Space Program.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, so let's hand it off to Drunk Canadian. Stick around for him. He's got a great show, great personality. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.